scoring.
Thank you all for coming. It's been an incredible morning so far, and I look forward to the sessions to come as well. Before we get started, or as we get started talking about social scoring, I want to play a little game that will actually pick up from where Shana left off. So Jill, if you could please come up and help me. And I need a couple of volunteers, some people who are intrepid and not squeamish. Liz, and come on down, Kev. And how about one more person from this side of the room? Ricardo, come on. Come on. Okay, so Jill,
yes.
You kind of know some of these people, some you don't. So what I want you to do is take this marker, these badges, and instead of writing their names on them, please write, according to you, a number from 1 to 100, where 1 is the lowest and 100 is the highest.
Is there another
According to you, the number that best represents their influence on you.
Wow.
Yeah, quickly. So any number for Ricardo, any number for Liz, any number for Kevin.
Okay, and then after that,
We'll see what happens after that. Just write the number right now.
how to win friends and influence people. I'm writing down the number.
On each name badge, yes. Just write it nice and big so everyone can see.
You don't have to be nice, Jill.
Yeah, you don't have to be nice. This is just a game. Perfect. Now one there. Perfect. And just one more. Okay, so now can you take these labels?
Sure.
Who's a 50?
Kevin.
Okay, put that on his forehead, please. Who's a 60? And the other number goes on Ricardo's forehead. Thank you, Jill. Let's give her a round of applause. And thank you to our 3 intrepid volunteers. If you can turn around so that the camera can get a lovely shot of you. So welcome to our world, ladies and gentlemen, a world in which we all walk around with numbers on our heads. You can take your numbers off now and you can sit down. This is the world of social scoring that we live in. Whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, and most of us in this room don't like it, I have to qualify my Klout score. We are being ranked. The thing is, we've always been ranked, and we have always engaged in ranking. Subconsciously, unconsciously, or consciously, almost every decision we take is based on this act of prioritizing. Whose emails do we respond to before others? Whose phone calls do we take, and who do we let go to voicemail? Who do we decide to comp at a conference or not? Who decides if we get a media pass or a blogger pass or not? There is ranking inherent in almost everything we do and experience. The problem with this world of social scoring that we live in now is that these rankings are starting to become more and more visible. We are, figuratively speaking, walking around with these numbers on our heads. And it's uncomfortable, A, because it's visible, and B, because there's not so much that we can do about it. It's out of our control. There are only so many factors that we can control in how other people perceive the numbers on our heads. Let me tell you a story. And that story relates to my name. Most of you know me as Shonali, but I have another name. You see, I am the Baconator. And the way I got the name of being the Baconator was that some friends of mine and I love to talk about bacon. We like to eat it. That is true. Sometimes we like to talk about it much more than actually eating it, but we'll still talk about it and we'll make fun of each other and our bacon habit. So a while back, we were talking a lot about bacon online. And the next thing we knew, I was dubbed influential in bacon. What happened after that was when I noticed this, I said, oh, look at that. I'm influential in bacon. And my friends, because they are rather wicked, started giving me plus Ks in bacon. So I became really influential in bacon. Except I didn't get anything out of it. I never got any bacon. I never got any promotions around bacon. And for the people who this could really have mattered to, the bacon manufacturers and people who work in the bacon business, the fact that I was influential in bacon was completely useless. And this is the problem with social scoring. In fact, it's one of the three big issues that I see. The first is that without context, influence is meaningless. You cannot have influence without a context around it. The second problem is that by virtue of the fact people respond to each other or retweet each other or share @replies, that level of engagement is a very shallow, superficial level of engagement because it does not equate to the actions we need to see take place when we deem someone as truly influential. And the third problem is that because of this world of social scoring, we automatically start to equate people with these very high numbers as being more influential. And they're not necessarily so because if there's no context, they're not influential. And so you have the circle of where if it's not contextual, it's not relevant, and it's not driving towards action, it is not actually influential. This is obviously a tough thing to deal with because as marketers and as people who are working to help brands get a voice and tell stories towards business results, we have to figure out how to deal with this. So what do? Well, we need to start finding people who go beyond the numbers, who go beyond simply the acts of @ing and retweeting and passing things forward to being the people who can generate action. A couple of years ago, I had one of my favorite clients of all time, I think, at least up to now. See, context. And this is an organization called USA for UNHCR, USA for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. In fact, Lauren Melling, who used to be my client, is here today, so she can tell you if anything I say is BS. But USA for UNHCR has a great cause. They help give refugees a voice by raising funds and awareness around the refugee issue within this country. Now, the thing with refugees is that they are invisible. They are forced out of their homes for no reason of their own. They live in refugee camps for years, sometimes decades, before they are rehomed and resettled, sometimes far, far away from their native lands. Are you one?
I am one.
This is exactly what I mean. But I did not know until today that Dino was a refugee.
Refugees are in the house.
There you go. So what do you do when you're trying to give invisible people a voice? Well, you find people who will help to elevate their story and who actually do have a visibility within the communities you are trying to reach and who are engaged enough with their own communities to spur them to action and ask them to tell their stories. And that's what we did when USA for UNHCR asked me to come in and work on their digital strategy with them. We came up with this concept of Blue Key champions. And I'm very proud that many of the champions who came on board are in this room today. What the champions did was reach out to their own communities and start to tell the story of the organization, of the campaign. And why was it called the Blue Key? Well, you can see what I'm wearing. Dino, you were asking me about this earlier.
Yeah.
It's this little pin. It's a $5 pin or pendant that you can still buy from the microsite, which I don't work for them anymore, so I'm not shilling, thebluekey.org. But the concept was that if you can get someone to buy this $5 pin or pendant and wear it, it gets people talking, as it did today. And if you can get other people to do that, then you start to help driving the story forward. So this is what we ask the champions to help us do. And over the course of the year or so that we worked together, watching this activity unfold, what was fascinating was that it was not, by and large, the people with high scores or high numbers on their forehead who were driving the most effective action. Around the middle of the year, we started doing tweet-a-thons. Many of you probably already know what those are, but for the few who may not, a tweet-a-thon is essentially your telethon, but you're doing it over Twitter. And you're doing it for an extended period of time on one day using a hashtag, trying to get people talking about it and driving certain kinds of action. This was actually a champion-generated idea. And the first one we did was in June of 2011, just before World Refugee Day. What was really interesting to see as the tweet-a-thon took off, which it did in June, and so we did them again, the champions who drove the most key purchases were the ones with low followers on Twitter, with low Klout scores. But what they were was truly energized about the cause and engaged enough with their communities to precede them, to go out to them beforehand and say, look, I'm doing this. This is what's important to me. Please help. And in fact, the second tweet-a-thon was in August of that year. And I remember being absolutely shocked at about 7 or 8 o'clock Eastern in the evening when we had one of our champions who was participating at that time drive these real-time key sales. And we knew that this was happening because the way it was set up was that any time someone purchased a key or a block of keys, we would get real-time notifications in our emails. So we saw this blowing up at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and I'm like, oh my God, what did she do? And I asked this particular champion later on what she did, and that's exactly what she did. She went out to her communities ahead of time, people she was already very engaged with and with whom she had a high level of trust, and said, help me do this. The champions who really lifted the campaign were people like Kiki. Not to say everybody else didn't, you guys did. But Kiki, during the second last or last, I don't remember which exactly, the November tweet-a-thon I think it was, decided to throw out a challenge that if she was able to get, I think it was 10 keys sold during her hour, she was going to sing Private Dancer and post it to YouTube. And she succeeded. And so to this day, we have this wonderful video of Kiki singing Private Dancer. She was engaged enough with the campaign to care about it and engaged enough with her community to spur them to action. And that is where we need to get. Social scoring can be useful. It can help us narrow down, in general, people who are talking about a certain topic, people who care a little bit about a certain something. But we need to be able to move beyond that as brands, as people who are working with brands and marketing firms, to find the people who will really spur our end audiences to action over the long haul, not just over one blip in time and then a second one, but really over the longest span of time. It's not just about numbers. It is really about building and developing your community and really putting down roots. Now, I don't think social scoring is going away. We are just at the beginning of it. Everything that we're seeing when Shana asked about Klout scores, or you may know your peer index score, or this rank or that rank, it's not going away. So we have a choice. We can either hate it and do nothing with it, and that's fine, or we can try and make it better. When Vanessa started out her talk this morning, she talked about how ultimately we're all trying to find problems to solve. Technologies evolve when they're trying to solve problems that people have. And to this day, I think that's why technology is useful. It's not because of the technology per se. It's because of how we can use that technology to make our lives better, to help us connect better as people. So if I had my druthers, I would have everyone in this room do just that. Use technology, Be analytical about social scoring. Don't get taken in by the ease of how you can just slap a number on someone and say, well, that's done. There we go. We've done our job. That's not what we're looking for. But really, let's find a way to make it better. Let's work with the Klouts and the peer index. And that doesn't mean you have to like everything they do. I don't like a lot of what they do. But let's try and make it better. When Dino wrote a blog post about coming to speak at Potomac, and he's like, oh, what's she going to talk about now?
What did I do now?
He said something that really stayed with me. He said, when you go to a conference, I'm paraphrasing, but when you go to a conference where anyone in the audience could be a speaker, you know it's going to be a unique experience. And that is really the case today. Any one of you is easily qualified to be up here and speak today. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and I turn it over to you. I want to know what you have to say about social scoring, where you think we can go, and how we together as a community that is engaged in the intersection of digital and business can help to make life better for people. Thank you.